welcome to this month's hearing of the Tuscaloosa Historic Preservation Commission. I'm Kathy Pagani. I'm the chair of the commission. Today's date is December 11th, 2024, and the time is 5:00 p.m. I would like to invite my fellow commission members to introduce themselves to you, beginning on my right, please.
Mary Harmon Young.
Sonny Deason.
Jordan Morris.
David Nelson.
Thank you. And joining us from city staff this evening is Mr. Hudson Cheshire, the Associate City Attorney, Mr. Jonathan Bowen, Neighborhood Resources Coordinator, Ms. Leota Coyne, Planner, and normally we have Mr. Kevin Jones helping with audiovisual support this evening, but we have other members of city staff assisting with that this evening. I'd like to go over the general purpose and the procedures for tonight's hearing. The general purpose of the Historic Preservation Commission is that we serve to preserve and protect the buildings, sites, and structures of historic significance and interest in Tuscaloosa's historic neighborhoods. We are governed by Chapter 20, Article 2 of the Code of Tuscaloosa, which includes design guidelines that are posted on the city's website. These decisions are based on these design guidelines and do not consider use or occupancy. We do consider such factors as architectural style, appropriateness of materials, and how the structure relates to other structures in the immediate neighborhood in determining the appropriateness of the application. An approval of an application requires 5 affirmative votes. If the certificate is approved, please be aware that there will be a final inspection by city staff to ensure compliance with what was approved by the commission this evening. A little bit about our procedure this evening. This is a public hearing. It is televised live on local cable, streamlined online through Facebook, and is being recorded to be posted on the city's website. We ask proper decorum, civility, and respect for others at all times. Prior to this meeting, a notice was sent to adjacent property owners, and the public has been notified of the applications presented tonight. This hearing is a chance for the applicant to present their case, for the public to make their views known about the project, and for the commission members to gather relevant facts about the application before making its decision. City staff will begin by introducing the application. The applicant will then have a chance to make any comments. The commissioners will then have an opportunity to ask the applicant questions about the case. I will then open the hearing to public comment. At the close of public comment, the commission will then discuss the matter and vote on the application. A notarized designation of agent form should have been provided to the city staff for any representatives of an application that are not the property owner or immediate family member of the owner prior to tonight's hearing. Immediate family members, defined as a spouse, a parent, or a child, do not have to provide such written authorization when speaking on behalf of another immediate family member. And we ask that you please leave the signs in your yard, as staff will be out in the next couple of days to pick them up. As the Historic Preservation Commission has received a synopsis of the October meeting, I move that we dispense with the reading of the minutes of the same unless there are any deletions, additions, or corrections. Do I have a motion to approve said synopsis?
Motion to approve.
Good. Do I have a second? And I have a second. And we shall vote. Beginning on my left, please, Dr. Nelson.
Yes.
Dr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Deason.
Yes.
Ms. Young.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed. The commission members have had a chance to review tonight's agenda items. Do any of the members have a conflict of interest as defined by Section 6 of the commission bylaws with any of these items?
I will need to recuse myself on HPC 7124.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask staff if proper notification has been provided for each of these agenda items.
Yes, it has.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to our first case.
All right, good evening, Commission. We're starting straight into our cases to be heard tonight. First one up is HPC 6924, Peggy Williams petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a driveway on the property located at 1 Oakwood Court. This is the Oakwood Court Historic District, Council District 4. Here is a photo of the property from above, as well as where it's situated in that historic district. Here is the primary structure on the property, the adjacent property to the east, to the south, to the north, and to the west. For the proposal, the petitioner is asking to construct a 25 by 39-foot concrete pad and driveway. The driveway portion of this will be 25 by 15 feet. The rest of the concrete will be to serve the open carport that came before you at the October meeting and was approved. The petitioner states that this is needed, the extra concrete, is needed to allow water to move away from the home into the street. In addition to the driveway portion, the petitioner is asking to construct 2 new walking paths from that driveway to side entrances on the home. Those are between 4 and 7 feet wide. All of this is a aggregate concrete material. As we get into this, this case did come to us as a violation, so you'll see this concrete has already been poured as we move into those photos. So here again is that subject property, the primary structure. Moving into the site plan, you can see the existing on the top, proposed on the bottom. At the October meeting, you approved to remove and replace the driveway on that existing site plan. On the bottom, you can see what is there today, that proposed concrete drive. And just to note, this area here, that is going to be the open carport that you all approved. This area in the gray is the driveway. Here's just a zoomed in version so you can see it a little more clear. Again, the driveway is 25 by 15. Here's some photos of what it looks like today. So on the left, that was the previous driveway. It was about 10 at the curb cut, 17 feet at the driveway entrance. On the right, you can see what's been poured today. And just to note, they are starting to frame that open carport you all approved, so you can kind of get a sense of where that carport will sit in relation to that concrete pad on the left. Moving into the paths, you can see just 2 paths off of that driveway to access side entries at the home. And here are those paths. The material, again, is a pebble-style aggregate concrete. And moving into our applicable design guidelines, we have sidewalks and paving, parking, more on parking, parking materials, and driveways. We did not receive any public comment for this request. Do you have any questions for staff?
Can you go back to the photo of what is existing today?
Yep.
And can you draw a line on what the area that was approved?
So again, this will be approximate.
Sure, just to give us an idea.
My best drawing attempt here, but it was something like that. There's no change to the curb cut that's there today. That existed previously, so there's no widening there. It's just the pad on the property that was widened.
Are there any other questions for staff?
The widths are provided of the construction that's there, is that correct?
Right, so let me get back
Are
to
the
the
widths
site
provided
plan.
for the sidewalk areas too, or just for the driveway?
So the 25 by 15, that excludes the sidewalk, as that would not be counted towards the driveway percentage that we look at for our zoning.
Right. But there are no dimensions for the sidewalks that were,
Oh, sorry, I apologize. So the 2 paths that enter the home,
yes,
those are between 4 and 7 feet wide.
7?
That's correct.
Is the one that comes off the driveway the 7 foot?
The petitioner can confirm which one
Okay.
is 7 and which one is 4.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Coyne? Thank you very much. Let me invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come up to the podium, please. And we will need you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Heath McCullough. I'm here representing Old South Construction for Wesley Jones. You need my home address?
Yes, please.
Okay, my address is 11985 Glen Ridge Boulevard, Moundville, Alabama 35474.
So, Mr. McCullough, can you tell us a little bit more about what's happened here with what was approved and then what has now been put in place?
Yes, ma'am. So the the approved driveway that she laid out is actually, the line was a little bit closer to the road. If I can go back, I wish I could draw it for you. So we were having a water issue pulling up in the yard, and when the water would pull up, it would run back to the structure and go up under the garage. So we decided to pour that extra, it is 12 foot wide by 21 foot long, that was not approved concrete, added to the pre-approved driveway so that the water would run off.
Could we see a picture of what's there currently? And then,
Yes.
And then you might have the power to,
Oh, gosh.
make little marks on there. I'm not sure how you do that, but.
Mr. McCullough, if you slide that drawer towards you, you can actually draw on that screen.
Using my finger?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the actual approved driveway and where the structure will sit, it will cut off right here. There's a joint right there. So the section that was added is this section right here. That is the new section of concrete that was added, that was not in the October approval.
And then while you're there, understand we've taken down the garage, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so the front edge of the new garage that was approved will be approximately, just,
It'll follow this line
Yep.
right there.
thank you. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you have anything else to add?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions here for the applicant's representative?
Were there any specifications on the two side entrances as approved previously?
I am not
The
aware
two
of that.
paths, or whatever they're called, sidewalks?
The paths were not part of the October application.
They were not? So they're additional part to this one?
Correct.
And so let me just say this, since I chair the commission.
Yes, ma'am.
At the end of every application, I tell the applicant or the applicant's representative that whatever has been approved, should there be any changes, to please see city staff before we move ahead. I can see potentially how you widened the driveway, but the paths seem like something that you might have thought were adding something extra, and
Yes, ma'am.
you did not go to talk to city staff about it
Yes,
first.
ma'am. So what I was made aware of, the reason that the paths were demoed and re-added back is because of the existing paths had a few buckle spaces in them from roots, and the contractor just wanted to make a more accessible entrance into the house. That's my understanding.
Yeah, and the rationale makes sense. It's just that city staff wasn't notified before the
ma'am.
work was done, and that's
Yes,
the
ma'am.
issue we have here.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. McCullough? Well, we don't have any more questions for you right now, so thank you. You may have a seat. We may bring you back
Yes,
again.
ma'am.
So we've received no public comments submitted. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to this application? All right, then let me close the floor to public comment, and let's open the floor up to discussion by commission members.
The same dimensions as the previous, or are they larger? They look wider.
Large.
They look larger to me, too.
They don't, I mean, they're not a replication of what was taken up and put back.
And if do we have a picture of that side yard prior to this work? Or this, I guess the other front yard, whatever?
We'll
We
check
got-
if we have any photos
Okay.
of the existing.
If you see right there, Dr. Nelson, it does look like there's a sidewall. And I'm curious where that sidewall falls on the old picture.
We also have a very large driveway
Massive.
in addition to that. I just waiting for city staff to see if they can pull up a photograph of that.
I'd like to say I like the material.
Well, I was about to say that, like.
The material's great looking.
Yeah, the exposed aggregate is really, is nice. It's good, nice, consistent finish, and it's a nice material, and the work is done well.
Still, it was a major change of plans, and regardless of the logic for it, there was no request to staff about it.
That's correct. That's correct. So while we can appreciate the materials and the workmanship on this, we still have the issue that, would this have been something that we would have approved had it come to us initially? There we go.
There we go.
Doesn't, it doesn't show us too much, but at least it's something. But we don't have any photos in our archives, do we? The files now.
Well, the other problem, as I see it, and some of the neighbors around that house in that neighborhood have brought it to my attention, is that it takes up more than 35% of the yard. And it's in our guidelines that a piece of construction like this should not take up more than 35% of the yard.
And city staff, did you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. So the guidelines, when it discusses parking, it specifically relates it to the rear yard. Since this is on a corner lot, this is actually treated as front yard parking. From a zoning ordinance perspective, outside of the guidelines, I think it's roughly 10% of the front yard, just this gray portion. So we don't count the parking underneath the carport, nor a similar situation underneath the garage. So from a zoning perspective and from a HPC perspective, it's not parking in the rear yard.
It's not what?
It's not parking in the rear yard.
So if you wanted to use more than 35% of the front yard, you could?
That's where zoning would prohibit that. We have a specific regulation that limits corner lots, specifically corner lots. They're guaranteed up to 900 square feet, but it also has to be less than 40% of the front yard. When you have a corner lot, you have, this survey kind of shows it a little bit better. Essentially, everything circled in blue is treated as a front yard.
And so, based on that zoning definition, this does not exceed that 35%.
That's correct.
And that's even with the inclusion of the added sidewalk, is that correct?
So we don't take into account the added sidewalk. It's just related to the driveway. So where that sidewalk kind of, the survey shows it a little bit easier. Now, this below doesn't show the sidewalk plan as well, but that would not be taken into account for parking as it relates to parking. So for example, it would be measured here.
But couldn't a car pull in 7 feet right there? To the right?
Are you talking about on the sidewalk?
Yes. Isn't that wide enough for a car?
I don't know the engineering
Probably a golf cart, for
specs.
sure.
Yeah,
Huh?
I said a golf cart.
I don't know if
sure.
I'm qualified to give that answer.
I think that's kind of an interesting observation, though, that do we make a big parking area and call it a sidewalk, and then we skirt the parking issue? I thought that's very interesting.
It still doesn't get to 40% of the
It-
front yard.
No, it does not.
So, and it doesn't get to 900 feet. So it's a moot point regardless.
Yes, so can we look at what we can consider here with this? So size-wise, that's a moot point. In terms of that 35%, we can't discuss it that way. But it is wider than what was approved, right? I don't know that it's appropriate for that house to have that much parking like the driveway just expands right from the road into something that's, 25 feet wide?
It dwarfs the rest of the yard, and to some extent dwarfs the house.
Any thoughts on this?
I've got a question for the petitioner. Can he come back up? And the petitioner? as you left. Are there any horticultural type plans for all of this that you should share with us?
Sir, will you ask that again? I'm sorry.
Are there any type of planning or horticultural type plans that you should share with us?
I do not have any. No, sir.
Because I just wondered if part of y'all were gonna buffer with shrubbery, that sidewalk area, or if you had any idea?
I do not have, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
So let's take it back to this. We had approved something when we first saw this application, and then what we're looking at now is something that is different. Is this the kind of thing we would have approved? My feeling is that I was fine with that first application that came through that we did approve, and I find this is something that I would not have been comfortable with at that time.
100% agree.
I
And
don't
so,
think we would have approved the size of the sidewalks.
well, the sidewalks are really
They're
rather
gargantuan.
large, yes. Further thoughts on this?
Well, excuse me, I tend to agree that had I looked at this on the initial application, I would have questioned it. I don't know that I would have totally agreed with the size of it. But what we're having to look at now is what's been done, which is not what was approved.
Right. All right, here we go. So, if we look at the design guidelines, we have driveways, done in a manner and width compatible with those, historically installed, generally not wider than 10 feet. I think the sidewalks, I tend to agree with Dr. Davis as well. The sidewalks are the width is not compatible with what was there. I have a little less problem with the sidewalks than I do with that driveway area. However, I'd like to hear what others think.
I tend to agree with the rest of the commission related to that specific pad that extends in front of the carport, but is not part of the curb cut. It appears that it looks like an area that should be grassed, and at least from a visual standpoint. Even if it was a drainage concern, there were other methods that could have been utilized to address that.
Agreed. Now, let me ask city staff and OCA. They didn't have the sidewalks on their initial application that we saw. So if we were to deny the sidewalks now as is, they could come back to us with a sidewalk proposal, right? As long as it's different, like narrower, let's say.
That's correct. If it were to be denied, they would have to come back with a separate or different proposal.
Right. So it doesn't preclude them from doing sidewalks. It's just if we have an issue with, let's say, the width is not appropriate for that historic area, then they are welcome to come back and propose something else.
That's correct.
Got it. All right. Any more comments or questions or discussion? Mr. McCullough, thank you. I think we're okay with you right now. I appreciate you coming
Yes, ma'am.
back
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Hearing no further comment from everybody, we have a standing motion to approve HPC 6924, Peggy Williams petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a driveway on the property located at 1 Oakwood Court in the Oakwood Court Historic District. We're going to vote on this. However, this mentions the driveway, it doesn't mention the sidewalks. So I want to make sure that we're going to be clear on this, that we're talking about the driveway and the sidewalks, correct?
Yes, this will be for the driveways and the paths on
And the
the
paths.
property.
All right, driveway and the paths. So let me just amend that by saying construction of a driveway and paths on the property located at 1 Oakwood Court in the Oakwood Court Historic District, Council District 4. Dr. Nelson, would you like to start the voting process, please?
No. And guidelines I would like to cite is my reasoning.
Thank you, and we'll come back to that. We'll see how the vote shakes out. Dr. Davis?
No.
Mr. Morris?
No.
I vote no. Ms.
No.
Reason? And Ms.
No.
Young? And you vote no? Yes. So since this has not been successful, we need to state our reasons for the non-approval of this application. So Dr. Nelson, please go
Right, I
ahead.
just don't feel like it meets the guidelines.
Thank you. Dr. Davis?
Similarly.
Yes. Mr. Morris?
Yes, specifically the section related to driveways that shall be in a manner and width compatible with those historically installed and generally not wider than 10 feet, as well as the specific parking requirement that says minimize the presence and appearance of all parking areas visible from a public street through site planning and design.
Thank you very much. I will hook my wagon onto that as well, and I will also say that I find that the paths are also of a width that's not really appropriate for that area. Mr. Deason?
I feel it fails to meet the design guidelines.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
I think Jordan said it best, but specifically with the manner and width compatible of the paths as well as minimizing the view from the public right-of-way.
Thank you. So, Mr. McCullough, the applicant has been turned down this evening. Please have the applicant or yourself work with city staff on moving forward with this, because there are various things that you can do, and you know, good luck with everything. Thank you.
All right, Commission, next up is HPC 7024. Chaz Gunter of Legacy Construction petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for a design change to the roof. This is on the primary structure on the property located at 328 Caplewood Drive. This is in the Caplewood Drive Historic District, Council District 4. Here's a view of the property from above, as well as where it's situated in that historic district. Here is the primary structure on the property, the adjacent property to the north, to the south, and to the east. For the proposal, the petitioner is asking to remove and replace the existing 3-tab asphalt shingle with a new GAF Timberline asphalt shingle. Here again is that primary structure. Here is that existing roof on the left and the proposed shingle on the right. Here's just a zoomed in product view of that proposed shingle. Again, the material is an asphalt shingle. Here are our design guidelines on roofs and roofing materials. We did not receive any public comment for this petition. Do you have any questions for staff?
No questions. Thank you. Let me invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come up to the podium, please. And we'll need you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Chaz Gunner, 328 Caplewood, representing Ann and Connor Lyles.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about this application?
We're planning to paint the house. I'm not sure why that didn't wind up in the application. I know we sent it in, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
If,
I think what we're just dealing with the roof right now, so
Okay,
we'll just focus on that. But essentially, what it looks like to me is that you're just up-leveling the asphalt shingle.
oh yeah,
Better quality.
It'll extend the life of the roof.
All right.
Extremely.
Are there any questions?
Just for clarification of that, petitioners mentioned repainting of the structure, and has staff been notified of that? And
Yes, the applicant applied for an expedited review. I believe it's been approved. I'd have to check our records, but they have reached out to staff regarding that project.
thank you.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Gunter? Well, thank you very much.
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
have a seat. We've had no public comment submitted. Is anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to the application? Then let me close the floor to public comment and open the floor up to comment, motion, moving on by commission members. It appears we're going with with asphalt shingle existing, but it's just a better quality, kind of an up level on this. Would I be correct on that, Mr. Deason?
That's correct.
All right. So hearing no further chatter by the commission, we have a standing motion to approve HPC 7024 Chaz Gunter Legacy Construction petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for the design change to the roof on the primary structure on the property located at 328 Caplewood Drive in the Caplewood Historic District, Council District 4. We will vote, beginning on my right. Ms. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Deason?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr.
Yes.
Morris? Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gunter, your application has been approved this evening. Should anything change, please see city staff before you move forward, and good luck with your project. And let the record show that Mr. Deason has recused himself from this next case.
All right, next up is HPC 7124, Robert and Carolyn Deason, petition for a certificate of appropriateness for exterior alterations. This is to the primary structure on the property located at 402 17th Avenue in the Pinehurst Historic District, Council District 4. Here is a photo of the property from above, as well as where it's situated in that historic district. Here's a photo of the primary structure on the property. Its neighbor to the north, to the east. Getting into the proposal, the petitioner would like to remove and replace the existing wood floor on the front porch with a composite porch board. There'll be 3.2-inch exposure and they're tongue and groove. There'll be no change to the footprint of the porch. Here again is the primary structure. And just a site plan from the applicant. In the red box is that porch, so we're on the 17th Avenue side of the home. Here's some photos submitted by the applicant of the wood porch boards today, and just some detail on the condition of the boards. Here are the material specs for the proposed porch board. And again, the material is composite porch board. And getting into our applicable design guidelines for porches. Our standards for rehab and alteration, starting with design character. Repairing original features. Replacing old features, existing alterations, and materials. We did not receive any public comment for this petition. Do you have any questions for staff?
We have none, thanks. Let me invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come on up to the podium, and we will need your name and address, please, sir.
Miles Peppenhorst, MAG Contractors, address 15184 4 Winds Road in Northport.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about this application?
I have nothing to add to it.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're maintaining the same appearance. We're just replacing the wood with composite.
That's correct.
Are there any questions for Mr. Peppenhorst? Well, thank you very much. We have no questions for you at the moment.
Thank you.
We've had no public comment submitted. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to this application? Then let me close the floor to public comment and open the floor up to discussion by commission members. You can see that the wood is rotted. You know, it's a very straightforward application. All right, seeing no discussion among the commission members, we have a standing motion to approve HPC 7124, Robert and Carolyn Deason, petition for a certificate of appropriateness for the exterior alterations to the primary structure on the property located at 402 17th Avenue in the Pinehurst Historic District, Council District 4. Voting, Dr. Nelson.
Yes.
Dr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Young.
Yes.
And we have 5 affirmative votes. Your application has been approved. Should anything change, please see city staff before you move forward, and good luck with the project. And thank you. And let the record show that Mr. Deason is returning to the hearing.
All right, Commission, last on the agenda for tonight, we have DHPC 0224, AJ Tosiali, petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of an existing structure and the construction of a new mixed-use building. This is on the property located at 505 19th Avenue in the Druid City Historic District, Council District 4. Here is a photo of the property from above, as well as where it's situated in that historic district. Here's a photo of the primary structure on the property, the adjacent property to the north, to the west, and to the south. Getting into the proposal, so two parts. The first is to demo the existing structure, with the second part being to construct a new mixed-use building. That proposed new construction is a 3-story mixed-use building. Ground floor will be commercial and apartments on the upper floors. Here again is that primary structure. Here are just some different angles taken by staff, as well as just a quick shot of the block that the building is on. Here are some elevation photos submitted by the applicant. And the applicant also submitted a structural analysis screenshotted here. You can see the structure today is wood products as well as concrete masonry walls with a brick veneer. The analysis noted there were several excessive structural deficiencies listed in that bullet point list. With that, and to quote the letter itself, it is in their opinion that this building is not safe for occupancy in the current condition. Below are some photos showing that condition on the inside of the structure today. Moving into the site plan, you can see the existing site plan on the left, proposed on the right. Getting into the elevations here, so the primary or west elevation here, south elevation, east elevation, and north elevation. Here are some renderings submitted by the applicant to show what the product would look like. And another angle here. Moving into our material list, you can see it covers a lot of different areas. We have a brick veneer, emulated wood grain metal panels throughout, an aluminum storefront, steel and glass bifold door. Moving into the residential side, some clad wood windows and clad wood doors, a glass railing and metal cap, some other steel doors, and powder-coated aluminum to mimic wrought iron for a decorative fence and gate. For the roof, a single-ply roofing membrane system. The applicant submitted several detailed pages of material specs. This is just highlighting a couple. This product is those metal panels you saw on the previous screen, and this knotwood product is for that emulated wood product. Getting into our applicable design guidelines here, we have demolition, new construction, original design character, generally for new construction, doors and windows in new construction, form and scale in new buildings, windows, window materials, roofs, roofing materials, fences and walls, and materials for fences and walls. We did receive one public comment on this application. It was regarding the location of parking, which is outside the commission's design guidelines. The applicant did submit some slides to share with you all tonight, but do you have any questions for staff before that?
I was wondering if you can go back to the adjacent properties.
Oops, sorry, one too far.
Or just keep going with what
Oh.
you showed.
Sorry.
Because as we're sort of talking about this, this is the adjacent southern property. The adjacent property to the west, you didn't include you've got this, which is a little farther away. I mean, it kind of gets there, but also to the west is that much lower one-story where Big Bad Breakfast and Lush is, which is a historic building that's been repurposed. I just wonder if we can pull that up from Google Street View so we get a better sense of what's in that immediate area. I don't know what we did before Google Street View.
While that's happening, I just want to get a little bit of the procedural understanding related to this as it pertains to all of the other city approvals and zoning requirements for this piece of property. So is this in the Downtown Riverfront Overlay District?
So right now, we are going through a comprehensive zoning code update under framework. You all might have heard of the process as it's been going on. So that is actually on the agenda for council to vote next week, December 17th. So this is looking at the future zoning for this parcel, which is downtown historic edge. Moving in with that new zoning, our zoning districts are going to cover that downtown DROD overlay district. So this property would be in the downtown historic edge zone.
So
Under that new
what would the
code.
requirements to any of that new zoning as it pertains to this piece of property relative to our decisions?
I'm not sure I understand the question fully. Are you asking if there would be additional approvals or if it would have to go through another board?
Say, for instance, I designed the Bryant Bank across the street, and we looked at downtown overlay district based zoning and historic guidelines. And the historic guidelines took precedent over some of the other requirements. With all of this major change, is that still the same? Is there any applicability related to height, floor area coverage, setbacks, et cetera, with this new zoning for this piece of property?
Right, so with it being in a historic district, that would be the most stringent overlay it falls under, so it has to meet what you all would approve in the design guidelines. In terms of zoning, the historic is just an extra layer on top of the base zoning, so it still has to meet our zoning ordinance in terms of height, setbacks, all of that.
Does it?
Yes, the structure now.
No, the proposed structure.
Gotcha. So yes, we are reviewing this. It has been through a pre-development meeting with us, so we have been looking at this for that future zoning.
Okay.
Thank you, city staff, for pulling up this structure. It's a rather old photograph there, or old view, but the basic size is maintained. Thank you, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for city staff before we move on and see some of the other images that have been submitted? All right, well, thank you.
I'll just get them to their portion of the slides here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Would you both mind stating your names and addresses for the record, please?
Absolutely. My name is Brandon Bell, and this is Jenny Lanou, my colleague. We're with Gresham Smith. We're architects with Gresham Smith. Our business address is 222 2nd Avenue South, Suite 1400, Nashville, Tennessee, 37201.
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Commissioner. Thank you for hearing our case. We prepared a few slides to kind of walk you through the process that we've gone through to get to a design concept that is a unique solution for this site, for this beautiful historic district. Do I advance or do you? Oh, here it is, right here. Here it is. Excellent. So, as Tennessee architects, we've really enjoyed educating ourselves on the Druid City Historic District. We learned a lot as we did our research and dove into this project. We learned originally in '74, the original application had 47 resources. So it was a relatively smaller one compared to what it is today. They were all homes, which was actually interesting. And then there was a very big, expansive application to the National Register of Historic Places in 2014, I believe it was approved in 15, that expanded it to 222, much larger. But an interesting fact that we found somewhat challenging as we designed this project is that less than 9% are commercial buildings. And the kind of, some of the takeaway from our early research was that the district, the Druid City Historic District, most of the commercial buildings are adaptive reuse of old homes, which is interesting. And as we learned as we read through the design guidelines, we did realize that most of the guidelines are designed around homes, and we understood that and tried to apply what we could towards a commercial building. Sorry, our font is really goofy here, but we're not going to, the city staff already kind of told you about the existing condition of the building. It is a beautiful brick building, but it has some pretty major significant structural issues. We pointed out just kind of some architectural concerns we had about adaptations that have happened to the building throughout its
Can you go back
I'm
for a
sorry,
second, just to
that's
see the interior?
Yeah, hang on a minute. Right here, yes, ma'am.
Oh, obviously, no, the interior shots.
Oh, yes.
They're good, clear photographs. We can get a
These
good
are
idea
clearer
of what's
than the
going on in
previous
there.
one. And in the application, we did a little keynote of things that we saw that had been, we think there's actually an addition to the back of this building at one point that most of these photos are taken of. But there are significant issues that inhibit occupancy currently and create quite a financial challenge to reuse it as an adaptive reuse building.
Right, and let me just sort of insert this, you know, in the packet, we have a letter, I think it's by you, but there's also one by a structural engineer
Yes.
that
Yes, ma'am.
discusses the problems with this building as it exists right now.
Yes, ma'am, that is accurate.
Yes.
We did have a structural engineer review this building and had some findings that were highlighted, I believe, in staff's report up on the screen a minute ago. So kind of as we educated ourselves to design this building in an appropriate manner to meet the guidelines, we had to do a little bit of research. And this is kind of the challenge. We understand there's some objective pieces to this, and there's some very subjective pieces, which are the biggest challenges for the Historic Preservation Commission. This is coming from your design guidelines, and it says, I just want to read out loud, the new construction should reference and not conflict with the predominant site and architectural elements of existing properties in the area of influence. And new construction should respect established design patterns within the area of influence. New construction is not limited to historical styles, and new buildings should not be imitations of earlier styles. We kind of took a step up to the feds and kind of look at to see what they had to say about it, because it is a very nebulous area. And they actually, same language. Actually, it's standard 9 of the historic buildings, interior department's standards for historic buildings, which most HP's commissions across the country utilize. New additions, exterior alterations will not destroy historic materials. Spatial relationships are important. New work will be differentiated from old and will be compatible. Very similar language. So breaking it down, there's kind of 4 things that we want to talk about today. Some of these are objective, some are very subjective. An objective item is number 1, historic building materials. I mean, there's pretty obvious. You guys know what materials are common in Tuscaloosa. We know what building materials are common in the Druid City. And there's also some commercial examples that we're going to talk about that talk about building materials. Number 3, I'm going to jump down to number 3. We do know that you all have seen our proposal. We are differentiating new work from old. We're not trying to emulate an old building, which is what most historic preservation commissions do not want you to do. Number 2 and number 4 are much more subjective and are a bit more challenging for us, and we want to kind of talk to you about how we got to our design solution through those items. So let's talk about the area of influence. This is discussed quite a bit in Tuscaloosa's design guidelines for historic properties, and we take that as we went to the Historic Register's the one that created the application in 2014. There's a little image key plan, if you will, on the bottom right. So we're going to talk about some of the buildings just generally immediately next to us. So across the street, we did talk about this a minute ago, Big Bad Breakfast on the left. It's in the district, but all 3 of those properties, surprisingly, and I thought that one would be contributing, but they're not contributing. The previous building that was on the Bryant Bank building is not contributing. Any gray square on that map is not contributing. Red is contributing, which is interesting. So when we looked at these buildings, we kind of did an inventory of what are some of the characteristics, material styles that we see in these buildings. Even if they're not historic, they're in the district. On the left, we looked at canopies, we looked at the masonry, we looked at the storefront glazing, and we looked at these headers, if you will, above the punched openings. Bryant Bank is a new building. I didn't realize the architect, Mr. Morris, is on the commission right across the street. We looked at the materials there, a nod towards the past with the 9/9 light windows, again, a header detail, brick masonry, cast stone, and unique to our area of influence is a height of 3 stories. This is a prominent height that does speak volumes, literally volumes, to the area of influence. Across the street, this restaurant, currently a restaurant, I'm not really going to talk a lot about it. It's not contributing, does not contribute to the historic character or fabric of the district or the area of influence. We also did not even look at the materials. We're not proposing any standing seam metal or interesting V-shaped window details. Our building, right in the middle, built in 1942, colonial revival, very clear architectural style that is definable and is also cited in the historic register application. Defined as contributing, one of the only 2 buildings on our block facing 19th. I'm sorry, yes, facing 19th that's contributing. And then this amazing building built 16 years later, which is the Fitz agency, which is fascinatingly still occupied by the original builder. The company's been there since '58. We can only imagine, Jenny and I had this discussion about what the Planning Commission thought when this building was proposed in the Druid City Historic District. It's probably was quite a ground-shaking idea, this mid-century modern building, which looks very, very unique and stands out quite a bit in the district. But if you were to look at some of the other contributing, which we're not going to go through all the properties, there are several other, I think it's number 14 and number 25 on University that I would define them as a mid-century modern type aesthetic. So there is an evidence of a modern style of architecture in the district. So I call this more of an objective thing. The materials thing, there's evidence, sorry, the formatting is crazy here. The brick masonry, all contributing buildings in the district that are commercial is found brick masonry. It's kind of a no-brainer. Aluminum storefront, there was some discussion about the word aluminum. I know that if this was a single-family home, the first 3 applications we saw today, it would be inappropriate to propose a single hung or picture window that's all aluminum. In the commercial or mixed-use world, it's more common, and you saw that in the Fitz building and some of the other commercial structures as well. Metal panel is also quite evident. It was actually a very unique material, new material to the world when the Fitz building was built in '58, and we're proposing some of those same features on ours. Mesh panels, we don't have mesh panels, but they're some very unique materials that show up on these modern buildings that were built earlier in the district. Oh my. And then these are the more subjective items, which is the challenge of the Historic Preservation Commission to interpret what's appropriate for the neighborhood and for this site. We're making kind of 2 statements, and we're responding to the range of design styles that we've inventoried and found in the area of influence. And we are differentiating ourselves from a new project from an old project. And I think when you see some of the materials that Jenny, or the characteristics of our new building, proposed building, she's going to tie some of those back to some of the things you saw in the contributing projects. And we're also responding to the precedents created with new projects within the area of influence, the Bryant Bank. We're looking at the scale that's being proposed by zoning and community plans and proposed changes in the local area. We did also look real quick at a few other buildings that were commercial that are not in our district and also not in our area of influence. The Crest building, which is there's a couple of beloved buildings here, the one at 2325, again, a proportion in mass and scale and materials that we gravitate towards and really love. And we in some ways, and Jenny will talk about this, we are working towards or creating a building that has a common language with this or similar language. On the left, I believe this is a newer building on the 1900 block of University Boulevard. This is kind of the challenge, a multiple-story building in the middle of a area. This is, again, out of our district, but we just want to kind of talk about kind of, spot design for a building. And then this is in the district across the right side, non-contributing, but 1 story on the opposite side of University. I'm going to hand it over to Jenny and take it from here. Jenny.
Thank you. All right, so we have a couple of additional diagrams and images here that will help support what you guys have already seen. So this is a section looking through 19th Avenue. In the southern direction, our proposed building is on the left and the existing Bryant Bank building is on the right. This section is really here to illustrate the height, the scale of the building as it relates to its surroundings. So you can see there's a line of sight line there in the middle of the street. The kind of larger volume that you see on our building is the elevator overrun. So instead of bringing the entire building up to that height, really only that element sticks up above, but it is not visible from the street, much like the very top of the Bryant Bank building is not visible from the street. So you can see its relationship there. We're very, very similar in height to the bank building as it relates to how building height is measured, which is the top of the flat roof, which is what we have, right? Or the bottom of where the sloped roof begins for the Bryant Bank building. And then these are a couple of updated images. So these are the rendered perspectives that you've seen prior, but with the adjacent context layered in. So you can see how it relates to, specifically in this view, the Fitz Agency building on the right. So similar kind of square kind of frame language around the openings. Again, relating it, that building is about 2 stories high, so it's not, at this edge, it's not say the contrast that you see between ours and the restaurant building that's just to the left there. And then the other angle that you've seen before, again, looking back towards the Fitz building, you can see, again, some of those more massing and form language, the relationship between the two. We are, with this, we want to nod to previous styles with materiality, some of the window headers, like are on the Big Bad Breakfast building, but also give the building a character of its own and bring it into the time in which it's built, right? Not trying to recreate a style from the past, and potentially also missing that mark and cheapening this building and the ones that came before it. We threw these in here again just so they're a little bit easier access, but this talks about materiality, again, predominantly masonry. The metal panel is used as an accent around these kind of framed balcony areas and the canopy. The lower level, because it is commercial use, bringing in that more commercial feel to it. So really opening it up, the tenant is going to look for a lot of glazing and kind of that kind of indoor-outdoor feel to it almost. And then above, really utilizing this elevation as being open and providing as much light as possible for the residents of the building, but the kind of grouping of the second and third floor balconies really try to tie those together and have some vertical emphasis to a building that otherwise is kind of a box, but really using the details of the reveals at the levels, brick detailing at the cornice to help kind of highlight the horizontality of the building as well and break down that scale a bit. And I'll just cycle through these. This is the south elevation. I know you guys have all seen this. East elevation, which is the back side of the building, and the north elevation facing the restaurant. So I think that's all that I had for the slides.
Thank you. All right, commission members, you have some questions for Mr. Bell and Ms. Lanouille?
Yes, I have a question. The bricks, as we saw them in your display, look a different color than what we saw in the packet materials.
There is definitely an element of rendering that is conceptual, right? Even printer to printer, computer screen to computer screen, the colors will not match, and even the textures will sometimes appear different. So this is an updated rendering to what you've seen because we layered in that adjacent context, but it is not surprising that it does appear slightly different. But as far as I know the colors are not necessarily a part of this review, but
Let me
yes,
ask the question differently. On a scale of the Fitz bricks being on one end of the spectrum and a kind of orange-ish brick being at the other end of the spectrum, where are the bricks you're using?
Are we talking about color or size?
Color.
Color. Colors have not been finalized at this point for this. What we're representing here is a kind of a darker, warmer tone of a brick. So it's not red, it's not black. It's kind of somewhere in between, but as far as the actual selections and those colors have not been finalized.
Yeah, I mean, since you said that using the historic materials that were common, and that includes bricks in this area, it's significant, and it's a good part of the face of the building. So
Is there a preference? Do you
I
prefer the
would
brick
say
color
towards the Fitz building.
Okay, that's great feedback. Yeah, we have not compared our brick color to the Fitz. We were thinking more in general, just the material overall, the brick size
Yeah.
and actual brick.
Yeah. But you set it up as a kind of point of comparison, which
Yeah,
I
yes,
think is
ma'am. No,
legitimate.
absolutely. No, and this is great to hear. Yeah, no, we have not considered that exactly, but we would be interested in looking at a color that could be in a range that is complementary, maybe not exact. We would not
No,
want to match.
I wasn't looking for
ma'am.
exact, but
Okay.
on a range.
Yes, yes.
Is it more
We wouldn't-
orange, or is it
Correct. We
more
would not do
taupe,
Yes, ma'am. We would not do anything bright or obnoxious that would not complement the.
auburn color?
Yeah, I know better than that.
Could you go back to the previous architectural drawing that shows the side view? Maybe one more, yeah,
I'm sorry.
the one
Are we
right-
controlling at the same time? Sorry.
the one right before that shows the whole, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly what is that up on the roof? That room, what is that? No,
Oh,
no,
up
I'm
above.
talking about up
That's-
the building,
that's-
on top of the building.
That's essentially the elevator penthouse. The elevator goes up and it has an overrun distance, and so that's
Yeah, I
covering
understand
the
that. So is there
overrun.
access from the elevator to the roof?
Yes.
So people will be on the roof, possibly?
Only residents would be allowed on.
I'm sorry?
Only the residents would be allowed on the roof.
Okay, but you don't have the, the actual height of that building, of that part, which would actually make the building look like about 12, 15 feet taller than 45 feet.
If I'll go back to the street section. I know the line is not on here, but it is about the same as the top of the Bryant Bank.
I'm
Building.
not comparing it to the bank, I'm comparing it to this building. I mean, so it's not really 45 feet. It's probably 60 feet to the top. Is that right?
Height is defined.
Yeah, the building height is defined to the top of the roof surface.
I'm sorry.
So the top of the roof surface that is measured here, that 46'4", is how the building height is defined both by zoning and by the building code.
Okay.
So that's the definition by which that building height is measured.
On one of those drawings, though, I actually saw, it looked like a door
Yes.
coming out on one side of it.
Yes, so an occupied roof space with restrictions, which we are complying with, does not count as a building story, and therefore does not count as another level, which would then move the roof above, right, and would change the building height definition and the resulting building height for the property.
I was just curious.
Sure.
Well, I think Mr. Deason brings up a good point, though. You know, the zoning, absolutely, you've got to be compliant to that. We look at sort of some broader things, like overall height does have an impact, whether it's the actual defined roof height or whether it's height of the thing that's in that place. I think that was a good, I had that question too, and I'm glad he asked that. But I do have a few comments and things. First of all, let me just say thank you both for just putting the time in and the thoughtfulness in putting together this presentation for us. We really appreciate it. A lot of good information here. You know, I like that you look to the Department of the Interior. They do some really good stuff with their historic preservation information, and I think that's great. Tuscaloosa has, you know, our historic districts have not been in place as long as some other places. So when you talk about the Fitz Building from 1958, we didn't have defined historic districts at that time. They were established in the 70s. But I will say that there were some things that you said that resonated with me, and I just want to sort of throw these back out there because they fit into a larger sort of, I think, maybe narrative that I want to just sort of put out there. You know, you were both talking about, I'll just summarize it as, a building really is of its time and of its place or of its location. And I fully agree that we don't do slavish copies of historic structures. I think there's just something not creative about that, and there's no need to do that. But we do have to still consider place. You had mentioned a few slides there about contributing versus non-contributing. You know, we take that into account to a degree, but our surveys of the historic neighborhoods have not been updated in a while. And so what may have been non-contributing, let's say a 1970s building in a 1970 survey, may now be a contributing structure. So we still, as we look at this, we look at that, what we're calling sort of the immediate neighborhood. And I think as we do that, you know, Bryant Bank has been brought up a lot of times in the discussion here, and I see it on this slide as well. Bryant Bank is newer construction, and it's of its time and it's of its location. It's facing University Boulevard, a 4-lane major road, where this structure is on 19th Avenue. I think as we look at comparable ideas on height and scale with this, and even if we talk about historic details or the historic flavor of what we're doing, we need to look into that area rather than focusing on Bryant Bank, which is facing a very different kind of environment. Let's see, and also too, I think you brought up a good point about these subjective versus objective things that go on. You know, wouldn't it be great if everything were just very subjective? And I think you've done a great job with the demolition information, and that becomes more objective. We get these letters, right, telling us. We don't have to make that subjective decision on whether that building is falling apart or not. We have experts who have told us that. So thank you so much for those objective things that we can really work with. The subjective stuff becomes a little bit more difficult. And where we come into play with this is we look at our experience in dealing with the design guidelines and the historic neighborhoods in sort of adjudicating and deciding on these applications. So those are the sorts of things I wanted to put out there. I do think as we talk about height, you know, we look immediately, not to Bryant Bank, which is in a way kind of off to an angle, but you've got the Fitz Building. You've got that Tudor Revival apartments, one, you know, just a little bit over there. You have this one-story structure across the street, and it does not look like that now. But we've got this streetscape here on that street, and it continues on into that neighborhood. And it's really important. It's a really important part of Tuscaloosa, this little aspect of 19th Avenue. There was one more thing I was going to tell you, and I've forgotten that right now, but it may come to me. But those are some of the points I wanted to sort of bring up as we're talking about this. Oh, I know what it was. And just for your information, we don't deal with use or occupancy. So commercial versus residential is really nothing that we deal with. We just look at compatibility. We've approved a number of commercial buildings that have commercial on the ground floor, maybe residential up above, or vice versa, you know, whatever's going on there. But we don't talk about use. It's just really how compatible is the design in height, in scale, in materials, in aesthetics to what's around there. And so I just wanted to let you know that that's where we are sort of positioned in this discussion.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for the applicants? I mean, just thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. And I liked I really appreciated that you brought in these additional renderings that showed the adjacent buildings and the size of people there. Like, and then we can ask you these questions directly, and you can, like about height and everything else. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so commission members, you had no more questions for the applicants. We've had public comments submitted, but it dealt with parking, which is not something that we deal with. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to this application? All right, then I'll close the floor to public comment and open the floor to discussion by the commission members. This is really, it's one application, but we have two parts, right?
Yes.
So we can't have a demolition unless we have the proposed new structure. But why don't we start talking about the demolition first? We saw photographs of the interior. We saw letters from professionals in the area that the building really is not inhabitable.
They spoke to the fact that there may be an addition on the back of the building. I think that was in there. Well, actually, that building, the core of it is a 1920s building. You'll see a 3/1 window in the middle. The back and the front were added during the 40s. The date from the 40s is for the addition. So there's a blend of architecture. It's a marriage. It's not a pure to begin with, so.
No, I think I was going to clear up one thing. I'm old, so I know this, that I think the Fitz Agency, they're not the original tenant people in that building. If I'm not mistaken, it was AT&T or Ma Bell or whatever it was, if I'm not mistaken, was the original occupant of that building. Just thought I'd bring that up.
I'd like to say that I found the structural engineer's itemization of problems with the building totally convincing. And the pictures confirmed what
Yeah,
the
unfortunately.
engineer said. So I don't have a problem with the demolition.
All right. We can't have a demolition unless we have something
Plans.
proposed and planned and approved to do that. So let's talk about the proposed building. Can we go back to that streetscape photograph that shows the, there we go. I will say that I do find the height not really compatible with the area.
Yeah, I think when you said, Bryant Bank being on the, 4-lane road versus, an interior street, that resonated for sure. I have some concerns about the height as well.
I also have concerns about the height, but I also have a few concerns about the mass and the scale. It just fills the whole lot up, and it's just overwhelming compared to the rest of the properties around it. But those are my concerns.
It's really hard to make this statement being on the historical commission in that it really almost begs for the lot next to it to be redeveloped because that's where you want this sort of cascading step down away from University Boulevard as far as that mass and scale. So it makes it feel more out of place because of that, in my opinion. I also don't have any issue with the demolition per se. I'm really kind of wrapping my head around how all of that wants to work almost in 4 dimensions. When eventually that corner has got to be redeveloped.
I also, I am a strong supporter of modern contemporary architecture, and as I said, buildings really are are based on or designed on representing their time and their location. And so I don't have a problem with contemporary architecture. What I do want to see, though, in contemporary architecture within a historic district is some kind of compatibility with the surrounding historic character of the neighborhood. And while I admire the work on this design, I'm not seeing that here. And it may be that the height, I just find, especially with that large structure on the top, just a little bit overpowering there on 19th Avenue and with the structures immediately around it. And I'm, talking about not just absolute adjacent structures, because the building doesn't exist in a block of 4 buildings, but what's going on in that 19th Avenue going down to 6th Street, 7th Street, how is this going to play with that? Because it's set back from University Boulevard. And we have a number, when I think we saw a streetscape of University Boulevard, or a couple of examples there, but you didn't show, I can't remember the old ST Bun building, Duke's. What's the historic name of that? What home?
The Gil Verner House.
That's it. Can we, because we're missing, between these 2 photos, is this amazing historic structure. And, when we look at that 1900 block of University Boulevard, we've got this massive structure there and everything else is kind of lower. And if we continued on, we would see that 19th century 2-story, yeah. You guys have that? It's a really cool building. Anyway, but just seeing the title there about mixed use, there we go. And so there's an example, in my opinion, of we have a structure put up right next to the historic building with no air between the 2 things, and what that's done to that streetscape.
Can I ask Jordan the question that you posed to Leota when she was at the stand and y'all had the dialogue back and forth? Can you give me a synopsis quick of that, like the short version of that? Because I'm not real.
I don't want to speak for staff.
Got you.
However, in these urban, more infilled areas, there have previously been zoning regulations that have been written in a way that encourage more dense development.
Okay.
So building a single-story, freestanding, set off the property lines structure was discouraged by the way that the zoning language was written. As of next week, pending council approval, all of that will be rewritten. So my questions of Leota were surrounding kind of where things were headed and what staff's status was of this proposal relative to those new regulations.
And what was your take on the response? And,
That it's pending.
But is the proposal, do you know, to allow more density or to discourage it?
That's a question for staff. I don't know the framework regulations backwards and forwards to the point that I can respond to that question.
I think that's a fair question. So they're very similar to the standards that exist today, encouraging more dense development. Now, the zoning districts, they will differ in the future, but the overall design, the overall type of development, type of urban development that Mr. Morris was discussing would remain the same in the new code.
So looking forward at this left photo, the theory would be that the older buildings would be redeveloped, similar in density to that newer building.
see. I think that was my question about it, primarily came from the height. And I kind of think of blocks like a fort with a corner high in the middle low. But that's what's always bothered me about that one building that we just showed and some of the other ones. I've always considered the height on the corners like a fort and the middle part comes down. The other thing about this particular block is that it's really adjacent to where the residents start. And so it's not in more toward the city. It's actually the block that's adjacent to where the residential districts is. So to me, height comes into mind much more as you're looking at the way they abut or juxtapose on each other. The last thing I'd like to say is the new renderings and drawings and everything and proposal that y'all presented tonight won me. I thought from the initial things I looked in the packet, design, style-wise, I was on the less favorable end, but after your proposal, the points you brought up, the new drawings, the new images, and other things along that line, my pendulum swung toward much more the favorable end after that. It's a lot of help. The only thing about it is, as Kathy mentioned, I hadn't considered the little deal that sits on the top, so that's kind of where I stand with it.
In relation to the proximity to residences, and I think that's a good point, how big are those 1920s apartments that are about a block away? You know the ones I mean? They're a
Rose
little bit
condominiums?
past Druid Circle.
They're across from the Fitz building. They're
Yeah, those Tudor revival ones you're talking about.
Right.
I have some photographs.
They are. The Tudor
But I
Revival.
wonder how high they are.
We could probably get an estimate, but we wouldn't be able to confirm the height of those buildings, but they are 2-story. We just don't have the tools here today to.
I have a-
May you pull them up in Google Street Views?
I have a photograph too. Shall I text it to one of you? Will that help?
You go down
I think so.
19th
Well, I've
Avenue
got the
toward Queen
street
City and then
view
look
so you
back toward the
see it.
Fitz Agency.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go,
It's-
yeah. Just to the right a little bit. Yeah.
I guess it was the pitch that was sticking in my visual memory of the apartments, of the condos.
All right, so what we have going on here is, with this application, it's kind of an all or nothing deal. We can't approve the demolition. The whole application has to be approved. We can't just do the demolition and then the proposed. What I suggest, if there's no more discussion, we can vote on this, and then we can see how it shakes out, and then we can get feedback, comments on whether there was an issue with the demolition or whether there was an issue with the proposal and what that issue is. Does that sound like a good way to move forward, folks? That sound good? All right. So here's what we have. Standing motion to approve DHPC 0224 AJ Tosiali petitions for certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the existing structure and construction of a new mixed-use building on the property located at 505 19th Avenue in the Druid City Historic District, Council District 4. All right, so there's still a lot to happen here after this vote, but shall we vote? Ms. Young?
No.
Mr. Deason?
No.
I vote no.
Yes.
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 All right, so we had 3 yeses and 3 nos, correct? All right, so unfortunately, the application was not approved this evening, but let's have the 3 of us who voted no state our reasons for that. Ms. Young?
My concern is more with the height and the mass, knowing it's on this, not smaller street, but less traffic street, being across the street from, you know, the one level, and then being closer to the residential.
I agree with Mary. The mass and the scale of the building, comparison to comparing it to the rest of the area, and the overall height of the building, which I know is not counted as a height, but it really is there. You see it.
Thank you. I have no problem at all with the demolition. I assume that the 2 of you have no problem with the demolition.
Correct.
My issue is really that new construction really has an obligation to harmonize with the area, and I see that in terms of height with this. Even without that extra bit on the roof, I find this is tall. I do agree with, I think it was Dr. Nelson who had said that these renderings have really helped me understand the building better, and they're good, and I have less objections than I had prior to seeing these. But my main objection really has to do with the height in that neighborhood area. City staff can help you move forward. I know it's disappointing, but they can help you move forward with this application. We hope to see you back.
All right, Commission, and other business tonight, we've had 3 expedited approvals approved by staff since November. Also, in other business tonight, we will vote on the 2025 chair and vice chair, so I'll turn it over to y'all for that.
I nominate Kathy Begani as chair.
Well, I'll do it if you want me to. I mean, I'm happy to. And thank you very much, folks. What do I, so they vote, we vote,
Yes.
All in
Need a
favor,
vote.
say aye.
Yes.
vote.
Yes.
I abstain.
Yes.
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 All right. Vice Chair, I would like to nominate Mr. Morris again. I think we've worked together for a while now, and he knows the routine.
I'd like to second that.
All right. And
Yes.
so we'll vote. Mr. Deason,
Yes.
I vote yes.
Does this require 5 affirmative votes?
It does.
Does.
Yes.
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 There we go. All right, thank you, folks. And with that, we adjourn.